Thank you, everyone. This is such a real honor. And I actually don't have much prepared to say, because this is the first award I ever get. And thank you for making the award, because this is how I was able to convince my wife to let me leave Bethlehem to come here. Because of this award. Yeah. I'm really honored to be in the midst of all of you. This last 2 days have been amazing for me. And I'm so humbled by the fact that I come with a group of speakers and leaders from all around the world who are so committed and engaging in the fields of expertise that you are in, but all for the same purpose. All for the purpose of how can we truly make peace happen. And I was excited about this gathering and this summit because it addresses an issue that is dear to all our hearts. 10 years after 9/11, 10 years after so many people have been killed and traumatized and injured, countries destroyed by war, not looking at the past, but what are we going to do now to make sure, all of us, to prevent that from happening again. And I feel, after what I have heard in the last 2 days from you, that this group can and will do it. And I'm honored by the fact of also looking at the room and seeing also a mix of generations being present here. The wisdom of the elders combined with the energy of the youth. If it was the peace warriors or the scholars or the teachers or the professors in this university or the pastors, it's amazing. It is an amazing group. I can actually say I have spoken and I have been in many, many conferences, and I have never been with such a select group of expertise and potential for the future of our world. So I'm really, really excited about what we can do together. What I wanted to share with you today is a little bit more about transformation. We've been hearing a lot about it in the last 2 days, and today was an amazing day of listening to many people talk about their experiences. And I wanted to share also another personal experience that is very close and dear to my heart, that has also helped me transform my life. And it is a very deep spiritual experience that I had. As I said this morning, that you can have transformation every day of your life. In a person you meet, in a thought you have, in an experience, and in something that you might read. Coming from a Christian background, I read the Bible. And I read the Bible quite often. And a few years ago, I decided to, again, read the New Testament again, to read the Gospels. And as I was reading the Bible and the Gospels, I reached Matthew, and I reached the Sermon on the Mount. And you mostly look at the Sermon on the Mount and you say, oh, you know it, you almost have it memorized, so you kind of read through it, you just, because you're committed to reading it, so you still read the words of the Sermon on the Mount or any other biblical text. You could raise your hand. And as I was reading the Sermon on the Mount and reading through the verses, 3 words popped up to me. After I had read through it, I had to stop and I had to come back to these 3 words. And the 3 words were Jesus saying to me as a Palestinian, love your enemy. Now, you could look at Jesus in any way you want. You could look at him as the prophet, you could look at him as a crazy rabbi, you could look at him as the Messiah. But he still said these words. And as a person who had committed his life to following the teachings of this crazy little rabbi that lived in a land called Palestine, I began to really question, what does Jesus mean when he tells me to love my enemy? And putting it in the context of the situation that Jesus was in. He was a Jew who was living in that same land, living under occupation, living under oppression, military control, high taxation, abuse, violence, revenge, retaliation, hatred. He's telling the Jews of his land, you know what? You have to love your enemy. If you want to follow me in my teachings, you have to love the Roman occupiers. And I thought about it more, and I was like, well, you know, Jesus could have probably said many, many other things that would have been as revolutionary for his listeners. He could have said, make peace with your enemy. And the Jews would say, how dare you ask us to make peace with the Romans? He could have said, negotiate a peace treaty with your enemies. He could have said, resolve your conflicts with your enemies. And again, it would have seemed very revolutionary at that time for him to say those words. But he went beyond all of this. He went beyond making peace. He went beyond resolving conflicts. He went beyond negotiating agreements. And he said, you have to love your enemy. As a follower of Jesus, I also look at this and say, you know, it's a commandment. Jesus did not say, think about loving your enemy. Consider loving your enemy. Contemplate the thought of loving the enemy. No. Love your enemy. And for me, this is what it's all about. It's about loving God, loving the neighbor, and loving the enemy. And loving the enemy for me means it is about breaking every single barrier and wall that has made that person or that nation or that country treat me as an enemy or me to label them as an enemy. It is about oneness. It is about finding that common source of humanity. The best example that I could come close to in terms of what that means is when I got married to my wife, Rana. And we were standing in front of the pastor in church, and he said, with this love, I declare a new creation. In loving the enemy, what we are asked to do, even if they don't want that, is to seek every day of our life to create a new entity, a new identity, a new oneness with those who we have labeled as enemies or they have labeled us an enemy. No matter who they are, no matter who I have labeled in my life, in my history as an enemy, or you have done the same and labeled as an enemy, you are to love them. And you are to create and seek this oneness. This is what love is about. If I resolve my conflict with my enemy, I resolve it, but then I go my way and he goes his way. And yes, we might have a friendly relationship, but they remain who they are and I remain who I am. If I make a peace treaty with my enemy, it will be the same thing. It will be a peace agreement written on paper, signed by the politicians. And yes, there might be friendly economic relations or diplomatic relations between our two countries, but that's not what the message is about. The message is about completely combining yourself with that person or with that nation. And in a sense, actually creating a new creation, a new identity. It's about celebrating every joy that they celebrate. And it's about crying with them in every mourning or agony and pain that they engage in. It is like the love relationship of marriage, of companionship that we need to engage in. And this has become the core of the work that I am trying to do and that we're trying to do as an organization. How do we reach that point of truly expressing the Creator's love to those who we have labeled as an enemy, knowing that it is through our love and through our compassion and our care we are able to free them and to liberate them from the oppression that they are living and part of as well. Now, if I go to a checkpoint in Bethlehem and I walk up to an Israeli soldier and I say, "Come on. You know you want it. I love you, man. Give me a hug." Well, I think I might get something else. So maybe that's not the best way to do it. But what we're trying to do is to say that it is through our actions and our words that this can happen. And it is through engagement in nonviolence. Nonviolence for me is the most powerful weapon in the world. Nonviolence is the most powerful tool of transformation in the world. Through our engagement in nonviolence, through our engagement in peace movements, in dialogue, in real deep discussions to the core issues of the problems that we face, we are able to create that transformation in the hearts of those who we have labeled as our enemies. This is where nonviolence becomes powerful. And yes, it might be tough. It might be a very tough, sour pill that some people need to swallow in order for them to realize the injustice and the violations of human rights and human dignity that they have been engaging in. But this is the commitment, and this is the process that needs to happen. Because many people will live in denial, and they'll not even acknowledge and recognize the fact that they are even oppressors, and they are engaging in these activities. But as Martin Luther King said, one of his most famous quotes is, when you engage in peace building, when you engage in nonviolence, in this very direct way, what you are doing is you are liberating the oppressed and the oppressor from the oppression. God has created us in His image. And it was said in this session that there's a light of God that is placed in the heart of every individual that is created. And one thing that I say a lot to my friends is that until this point, one thing that I know for sure is that the devil has not yet mastered the art of creating humans. Every one of us, every single human being, no matter what you have labeled them, no matter what identity they carry, Muslim, Jew, Christian, Hamas, Fatah, Kahana, you name it, every human being is made and is created in God's image. And what happens to every human being is, as soon as they are born, they begin to have experiences. They begin to learn. They begin to have layers placed upon that light. And the more layers of hatred, the more layers of anger, the more layers of trauma, the dimmer and dimmer and dimmer that light becomes. To the point where we no longer are able to see it shining in their eyes. But it's still there. It's still there. And this is where we become responsible. We are responsible for breaking into those layers and making that light shine. I have been in demonstrations face to face with Israeli soldiers. Soldiers filled with weapons and guns and tear gas canisters standing in front of me. And I have put my eyes in the eyes of one soldier, and immediately you could see that light. And all it takes for that one soldier is just a blow. It's like a little dust layer that's covering their light. That's all they needed. One word, one expression, one sentence. And immediately you see transformation happen. I've seen soldiers break down and cry on the ground with all their weapons because they realized at that one moment that what they're doing is wrong. What they're doing has no meaning. It has no sense of security as what they were taught, that they're there to protect their community when they are on a Palestinian farmland uprooting a farmer's trees. But I know that there are other soldiers and other people who have tremendous, tremendous layers where maybe it's going to take more than a blow on their dust. It's going to take some heavy machinery, some real work to dig in deeper and deeper into them, to heal the trauma, to heal the pain, but knowing that they can also be transformed as well, and not to give up on them. But we all stand in front of a challenge today. Many of us have been in conferences and gatherings, and many of us live and enjoy the moment. The question is, what do we do after? Where do we go from here? What are the commitments that we are going to make individually or collectively to truly engage in this process of transforming ourselves, our loved ones, our community, our nation, and ultimately the world? We could easily fall back off track. Tomorrow we'll go to our businesses, we'll go to our schooling, we'll go to our problems, our challenges in our communities. And yes, we might then receive an email once a month from Euphrates and say, I remember that conference, it was good, but I don't have time for that now. Can this summit be different than the ones that many of us have done before? The only person that can answer that is you. In the work that we do with leaders in transformation, one of the things we ask them at the end of the conference or the training session is, what is it that you want at the end? And what we all want is results. And if I ask you, where do results come from? Do results come from dreaming about results? Do results come from thinking about results? Results come from taking action. Any result that you have achieved in your life, think about it, comes from you taking an action. The result of you coming to this conference is an action you took by riding a plane or getting in a car and coming here. The result of you growing healthy and well is the action of eating. We did wonderful eating this last 2 days. Any result that you want to achieve needs to have action. So the challenge for you is to begin thinking, even at the smallest minimal level, of what is an action that you could take to push for this oneness and push for this transformation to take place. And it doesn't have to be a muscle action, like physical action. As we have seen from today, from the experience, an action can be as simple as a conversation. What are the conversations that you will have with fellow students or fellow co-workers that can create an opportunity for result to happen in their transformation to become real agents for global peace? This is the challenge that I put in front of you. One of my favorite quotes that is very much related to the swing thing that you mentioned today says, "Come to the edge," he said. "We are afraid," they said. "Come to the edge," he said. "We are afraid," they said. "Come to the edge," he said. They came, he pushed them, and they flew. How many of you are ready to come to the edge? To break the stereotypes, to break the assumptions, to break the opinions that you have had of others, especially those who you have labeled as an enemy, and ready to stand at that edge and jump and fly. This is the challenge that we are in. And this is the oneness that we seek. And I encourage us, all of us, on a daily basis, to challenge ourselves in coming to the edge. Come to the edge and let us jump off the edge. Let us jump from this mythical space that we call safety and security and create that new reality for humanity. A reality of love, of compassion, and of what we all seek, that goal of human oneness. Thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this summit. Janessa, all of your team, and Byron, the board, all of you. It is an honor for me from this day forward to call every single one of you a brother, a sister, and a friend.